as well. So you should be able to access this at any time. This is a sandbox site that we have up for the public to use. And so after entering the address and landing on the page, you do see a quick start guide to help you get started. As a new user, you'll create a new user account. I want to point out that the steps are shown here on the right-hand side for creating that user account. The other thing that's important and of note for me to point out is that at the top of the site is a drop-down that you'll see that says English. This is a site that supports multiple languages so that your site visitors or the site visitors for this particular city can select the language that is most comfortable for them, does not have to be English. This application also supports Spanish, Portuguese, Vietnamese, Mandarin, and Korean. So changing the language changes it throughout the application and the user experience so that everything is changed to that language. I'm going to demonstrate today using English alone. A new user, when they signs up with a desired username, enters and confirms a password, and provides an email address, and that user information is then created. After creating that user login, that is entered on the landing page, and once the user has logged in, they're able to see any plans, either communities of interest plans or redistricting plans that they've created. Now, I'm a new user on this account, so I don't have any plans yet. And I will begin by clicking New Plan. And when I click New Plan, I have a couple of initial starting points. Now, in this particular site, this application, there is a blank map to start with, and there's also a map that has some existing boundaries. This is customizable to whatever you want it to be. So your setup may differ when you launch your site. I'm going to start with a blank map template. I selected that and I'm going to click Create and then provide a name for my template and click OK. And so when I click OK, I am taken into the application. Again, that help panel does show up. If I want to read through it and use it, I can leave it open. For site users that have a smaller screen or don't need the help, you can collapse that help by simply clicking the help link at the top. So that works as a toggle to open and close that panel. So here we have the city of Santa Monica, as you can see, and we're seeing some numbers on the map. Those are showing us the population for each census block, which is essentially a street block. And I'm going to begin drawing. I'm going to just zoom in, and as I selected that tool, and you'll see this with all the tools in the application, hovering over any tool does give a description of what that tool does so that it's not mysterious in any way. I'm going to begin by creating a new district. If I wanted some tips, clicking on the tips button at the top, so the help opens and closes a panel. There's also a tips link that provides step-by-step tips on how to use the software as well. So I'm creating a new district, and this tips is telling me to create a new district. I'll choose this, and I want to have new. Next, I can choose where the district information is coming from, and I'm just going to go ahead and leave this as all, and then the geography I'm using to build these districts. So I can make these choices along the way. So I'm just going to click Next, and we get a description that these tools can be used. And finally, the information about where some thematic data can be displayed as well. And I'll get to that in a moment. So I'm just going to begin building this district by clicking on a census block. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this census block and let the software know that this is the district that I want to use to add, the feature I want to use to add to my new district. So I clicked on this census block. It was labeled with the number 107. That corresponds to the information in this changes panel that is displayed. So this changes panel is providing information about the feature that I have selected. I will be adding additional features, so that will be summarized as well. So I can see I'm building a new district. I have added 107 people. Those 107 people came from the unassigned district. And then I can get a demographic breakdown of the population that is within that 107 people. This is can be a combination of data, it can be just the census data. That is entirely up to you. In this case, I have information about ethnicity and race. So I can see that of the 107 people, 5 self-responded as being Hispanic. This is using 2010 census data. 97 self-responded as being white. 0 is African American, so on and so forth. So I can really get that bird's eye view of the composition of the district as I build it. So it's easy to click and select features. If I know I really want to make broader strokes, I can draw a shape and select features that way. And in my case, I'm going to zoom out a little bit and really go at this a little bit bigger because I have quite a few people that I want and need to add to this district. So I drew that shape by moving my mouse, then clicking to add a shape point, continuing to move my mouse and click, and then double clicking to close. So the ideal value that I'm trying to achieve in these districts is 12,819 people. I was a little overzealous in my initial size here, so I can remove features if I want to do that by holding the control key and using that control key in conjunction with any of those selection tools. So I'm going to shave off this little bit in this rectangle. I'm holding my control key. As I double click, that closes the shape and removes everything inside of it. So that's the way the tool works. I'm just going to go ahead and save this overpopulated district, even though it's over by 13%. When I click that check mark, my whole screen got kind of gray, but you can see in that upper portion there's a new district settings. And this is my opportunity to provide a name for the district that I am creating. I will call this District 1 and click OK. And then that red shaded area changes to an area with a border, that green border on it. I can continue this process until I have drawn all 7 of my districts. And I'm just going to get back to Santa Monica. So as I draw my next district, I can again use all of the features if I want to, but that's really probably not what I want to do. I really probably only want to take from my unassigned features, and I'm going to show you the difference here. As I begin to draw my new district, and I'm just getting a whole big chunk of data, I have selected this red area, and actually in this case, because I overpopulated my District 1, this is not such a bad thing that I did. I will show you the difference just so you can see it. So I have 10,000 people in my new district. 2,389 of those people came from District 1, and the remaining 7,670 came from that unassigned district. So leaving my sources all was not a bad thing. I can also kind of pare that down if I really want to maintain the integrity of the first district I built by changing that source to only features which have not been assigned. And you saw everything that was in District 1 just fell out there. And my number was reduced to 7,670 people. So you have the flexibility as you use the tool not only to build new districts, but to determine where the geography that is being put in those districts is coming from. So again, I've gotten a bit overexcited and I'm just going to shave this off, but it's a pretty simple and fast process. You don't have to be an expert at map drawing. You don't need a whole lot of guidance. It's kind of just clicking around and seeing what changes you're affecting in that map. So I'm going to go ahead and create my second district. Again, pretty unbalanced. And it's a good thing I'm not providing you a demonstration on how to draw balanced districts, but we're just looking at these tools. And that's really what we're getting at. So we've created 2 districts so far. And in this collapsible pane that I have here, I can see all of that information about these 2 districts. So we get the information a couple different ways. As we're building districts, that changes table is going to show that information. And then the districts that are built in completion or some stage of completion are shown in the districts pane. And again, these are collapsible so that users have a clean experience when using a small screen. Just showing you a couple of the other features in this application. There is a legend which is currently collapsed. One of the opportunities that you have to help present information visually to the public is the opportunity to be able to color in features based upon some underlying data. So we have population labels on this map, but let's say, for example, that rather than just seeing that population data, you want to have some guidance to where voting age Black population resides. And so applying colors to the map really can help highlight information quickly in order for the online users to make decisions. So I can see that in Santa Monica, a lot of this area is less than 25% white or Black, excuse me. But we do have an area here around I-10 where there is more density in that particular variable. So this might help to guide one's decision-making to maintain a majority-minority district, or just have a better idea of the composition demographics. And you can control the numbers of the colors that are used and what they're representing. That's entirely in your user control. So that's one of the things I want to point out. The other thing that I want to mention is that you also have the ability to include geographic features which will help to provide a real sense of where people are, to provide context to the map. And that's done using this layers tab within this pane. So in this particular application, there's data that is really specific to Santa Monica. And included in this are business improvement zones. So if someone has a particular interest in those zones and wants to guide their redistricting decisions or community decisions based on that data, they can display it or they can turn it off. If they want to see information about the current police beats, they can add that information. And these are just examples of data that can be included. What is relevant for you may be different than in this particular application, but it is tunable to what you want to see. You also have the opportunity to include building footprints so that as your online users are looking at these street blocks, they really have a sense of where the buildings are located. There's the opportunity to add a lot of data to the application, as much or as little as you want. Your online users have the capability of really refining that data to what is applicable to them and to their own concerns. So if there's too much data and they want to reduce that, they can do so using this show hide columns. So for example, I'm just going to get rid of a bunch of these fields. I don't care about any of them except for these race fields. So making the change here it affects not only what is shown in my changes, so I've reduced the fields there. It also reduces the fields shown in my overall district's view. So this is a global change so that the user can really focus on the data that's important to them. The application does have reports built into it so that site users can easily understand the composition of the communities or the districts which they are drawing. I'm choosing a population summary report which accommodates up to 5 demographic fields. I only selected 3. This produces a professional report that can be downloaded in PDF format or can be printed to a regular printer. There is also a report that provides compactness information, and that report, again, can be printed or saved as a PDF. All of the plans that are within this application are siloed and kept completely private until users are ready to share them. And sharing is done using a variety of methods, each with kind of increasing level of sharing. The first way that a plan can be shared is by emailing the plan. When selecting this option, the map as it currently appears on the screen is embedded as an image in the email along with the tabular data that the user has selected. The plan can be emailed to anyone with a message, and optionally, the user can include an Esri shapefile and or a Maptitude for redistricting plan file. Either of those file types can be opened and viewed or edited in a standard desktop geographic information services software. The next level of sharing is sharing within the application itself. So when I share this way, my plan is made available to all other users on the site. So if I go back to that plans area, when creating a new plan, there is a shared tab, and this shared tab lists plans which have been shared within the application by any user. Those plans may be used as the starting point for any other user's plan. Finally, the last way to share a plan is to submit that plan. When plans are submitted, the site administrator is notified that the plan has been shared. This is an indication by your online user that they have completed the plan and are ready for it to be reviewed. So that is, I think, a pretty fair overview. Paul, I don't know if you have anything that you would like to add or...
No, I'm sure that there are people who are seeing census blocks and seeing some of this stuff, asking themselves what Esri shapefiles are, but we'll get to all of that in the presentation I'm about to give. So if folks have questions, I think this would be a great time to ask Tracy. She will be around, I think, again in the future, or you'll also be having other people give trainings on the software at the public outreach hearings and so on. So this isn't the first time, or this isn't the last time that you'll have this kind of presentation, but if you have some questions, Tracy's here to answer.
Tracy?
Let me start with Thomas. He has his real hand raised, and then we also have a virtual hand up to after.
Thanks. I can't figure out how to do the virtual one. Thanks for that. So on your presentation, you kind of went through different layers. You know, the first one you made the census 1, and then you came up with census 2 and 3 and 4. All right. So if I or any of us are doing this and we come up with, say, a map that's got 8 or 10 or 12 layers upon it, and we're really happy with how that looks, but then we want to try a couple variables based on that 8 thing.
Right.
And so I do variable 1, and then I want to try something new. Do I have to go all the way back to the beginning, or can I go to the split point where I tried after my 8 variables to do one and then another to see which one would fit? You
So
understand?
I think I do, and I think part of this too is just a difference in terminology, because this is a new thing you've been introduced to, and getting new tools and then a bunch of funny terms thrown at you can be confusing. So I think when you're talking about 8, you're talking about these districts that are drawn on the map. Am I understanding you correctly?
Right. In other words, each time I move something around and save it,
Yep.
right, that would be like a variable. And so if I get to the point where in Long Beach, if I've got all 9 districts sort of made, and then I want to start messing with things, I don't want to have to go all the way back to the beginning.
Sure, absolutely. And that's a really good question. And I have to tell you that I do these presentations pretty frequently, and you're the first person I actually remember asking that question. So I think you get extra bonus points for that tonight. When you take a look at your plans, basically when you get to that point that you want to start doing points of departure and what if scenarios, the best way to do that is to return to my plans and start making a copy. So I can make a copy of this Tracy's template, and I can call it Tracy's template 1A or something. And then I have a duplicate that I can work on so that I do have a reversion point, because I have that original plan and I'm just playing with a copy. So it's kind of like making a copy of a Word doc and then thinking you might add a couple paragraphs, but you're not really sure. It's the same concept, but we're just doing it with a redistricting plan.
Thank
Can
you.
you show Tracy the swap of like changing the target and source from 1 to 2? So
Sure.
that you can, yeah.
So in this case, let's just say I need to get some folks back into District 1 because I overpopulated it. And actually, we'll do this. I'm going to say I've been working on District 2, and my source was District 1. And I, again, got a little excited. We saw that my drawing, I was adding way too many people. I don't want to add to District 2 anymore. It's got too many people already. And the tools make it super easy to just swap these two, the target and the source. So this far button on the right, by clicking this, I actually am now going to build District 1, and the geography will come from District 2. The other thing I failed to mention before is that the district that I'm building gets a green boundary, so it's visible on the map, and the one from which geography is being removed gets a red boundary. So you also get those visual cues to try and help you along. Nicole, I think you had a question as well.
Yes, thank you. I actually have 2 questions.
Sure.
The first question is, with the link, it looks as though we just make ourselves a new user. That's our sandbox to play in, have at it, yada, yada, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. My second question is, and forgive the question, 26 years in public education, I can see that the help menu will obviously help, but I'm looking for the dummy sheet that gives me the keywords, vocabulary, like sort of what you just explained to Commissioner Cooper. Like sometimes it's hard to go digging for stuff. If there's some key, like these are your major things that you do. I don't know if that exists. So that's my question, if there's the dummies version sheet.
Those are great questions. Thank you. And so the design idea is meant to really make this super streamlined and not have so many bells and whistles that it's confusing. It gives you the tools that you need without giving you so much extra stuff that it becomes chaotic. So terms don't really matter so much. There are terms and tips in here. We have things that's showing in bold. So this is kind of the sheet for dummies because we don't want it to be so overwhelming. But really when it gets down to it, what you call things, what Commissioner Cooper called something, it doesn't matter so much how you reference it. What matters is that geography that you're creating. So as you're conversing with one another, you're going to call things different names anyway, and that's okay as long as you're understanding what you're talking about.
And Commissioner Lopez, we are finalizing a manual that will include a glossary with a lot of terms for things like what is a census block, what's a block group, what's a tract, and all the technical language that you've been hearing peppered throughout all these presentations you've been receiving.
That's great. I think that's going to be super appreciated, Paul. And I realize I should probably be calling you Commissioner in your last name, but since I started on the first names, I don't want to make it worse by switching midway through, so I'm going to keep with the first names. Feliza, you had a question as well?
Yes, thank you. I'm wondering for the layers, are we going to have the ability to customize what fields we want? If it's density, socioeconomic, we will have that opportunity to provide those fields or the layers that would be embedded into the software?
That is fully within user control, and my understanding and seeing Paul's nod is that he's going to be working with you on that, so the answer is yes.
Okay. And then my second question is, will we have the ability to overlay? So if we come up with our own design and we want to know how far off we are from current council district lines, for instance, will we have the ability to overlay the maps?
Yes, you can do that. So when we talked about, there are a lot of bonus points tonight, by the way, because that's yet another question that it should be a super common question, and you're the first person to ask it. So I'm really impressed with you guys. But in the layers, you can actually have a layer that's your existing districts that is turned off by default, but you let the site users turn on. And I think that would be really helpful and interesting if you wanted to include that.
Thank you.
Sure. Kelly.
I noticed you mentioned, Paul mentioned later that they will have more instructions on this in the future, but my question to you is, will this have in detailed transcript to like, okay, A section, navigate you how to do this? Because I'm more into that instruction. And I could listen to the video, but then I needed a hand-on do it. Will you have that later in the future too, or would you have it to where we can access it? Does that make sense to you? Like a step-by-step instruction? Can you hear me?
Yep. I think we were just
Okay.
making sure that you were done with your question.
Oh, sorry. I'm done.
You're totally fine. Paul, do you want to answer that, or do you want me to answer?
You can take your first stab at answering it, but if there are gaps that need to be filled in terms of help with the program, we will come in and help fulfill that. So Tracy, you can maybe speak to if there's anything off the shelf or like a user manual kind of thing that is for the online software, and then we'll fill in where needs be to make sure that the members and the community can use it.
So we do have that built-in help, which I showed you. We have been discussing the possibility of having perhaps some context-sensitive videos. So where we had those tips here, that there might be something that is a show me or something like that. That isn't here quite yet. So there's definitely an opportunity for that. So that's where things are at this point. And as Paul said, he's going to have the additional training tools that I think sound like they're going to be very helpful as well.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to reference later in the future, not anytime soon now. So.
No, that's great. And feedback is always good. That's how good products are built, is by listening to what people need and incorporating them.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. I don't see any other virtual or physical hands, but I may have missed Alejandra. Did I say your name right?
Yes, that's fine.
I should have just said Commissioner Gutierrez, because I did that part right.
It's okay. Yeah, it's Alejandra. It's fine. I wanted to ask if there would be some sort of presentation like this for the community, because this is what they're going to be using as well, right, to pitch their maps and their suggestions. So Obviously, this is a little bit difficult. We've already had the commissioners ask a lot of really good questions, and I would assume that our very diverse, residents of Long Beach will need some training or some access to support when using this software. And I think I just want to know what the plan is to make this accessible to people.
Chair Gutierrez, I think that the right way to answer that for right now is that we are planning that when we do our outreach hearing, or all those outreach hearings in each of the council districts, we'd work with you on a structure for those hearings. And that structure would likely include an initial presentation for the public on a lot of things about how redistricting works, why we're even here, what is it we're doing, and then some specific training on how to use the tool, focusing at the outset for how to use the tool as a community of interest tool to define your community of interest, and then later more specific on how to use the tool to draw actual new council districts. So we'll be including that. I think we might have Tracy back in for some of those, and some of those might be redistricting partner staff doing the trainings.
Great, thank you.